إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. Well, I only have 15 minutes to deliver this khutbah and give it its right. The topic is really a very deep and profound one, and it takes more than just 15 minutes, but I will try to summarize as much as I can. It's George Floyd, and I call it George Floyd is my brother. And where do I think the problem is? And what happened to him and happened to many others? I mean, there are probably hundreds of him, if not more. Where do I think the problem is? Some people think it is human nature, that, they feel, the natural feeling to discriminate against others. But I don't think that's the problem. I think that America, for the most part, does not want to admit there is racism or a problem of racism, and that it has become an epidemic infecting the population for many years. They say it is a thing of the past, but it is not. You cannot just claim ignorance of past people. I would rather think actually it is a systemic thing. America has failed to see the manifestation of racism, ignored the underlying cause, and only has been addressing the symptoms with superficial remedies, just like they're dealing with coronavirus. I see racism ingrained in the very makeup of this country. It is based on it. The belief that Europeans have an inherent right, and what I'm saying here is they teach this in schools. This is not something that I'm just making up. Every one of you heard of manifest destiny. And manifest destiny is an excuse to actually usurp and steal people's resources. So, the belief that Europeans have an inherent right to the resources of the newfound world in the North and the South of America, which they call manifest destiny, gives legitimacy to systemic establishment of all kinds of discrimination. Discrimination against women, discrimination against blacks, slaves, discrimination against natives, discrimination against refugees, immigrants, Mexicans, brown people, all kinds of people. It is ingrained in the system. Black Africans who were brought to America as slaves and Native Americans suffered the most from this type of belief. So, everyone probably watched the video. Let me take you to a different George Washington. There's a professor by the name Hassan Jeffries. He's an expert on the history of slavery. And he said while he was trying to look over his daughter's homework, fun facts about George Washington, one of them says he loved rabbits. And so he corrected it, saying he loved rabbits, he owned rabbits, he owned people too. So just focusing the attention of the children on one fun fact about a person and ignoring all the other, not too much of a fun fact. So not only did he have rabbits, but also owned rabbits, but also owned people too. Another fun fact about George Washington is that he lost his teeth when he was 24 years old. And he had dentures. So he corrected that, saying he had dentures from teeth brought from slaves. Teeth that were slaves' teeth. Why am I saying this story? This is something that you read in the textbooks, but they don't put the whole picture. Meaning they are teaching, the school books leaves off many details, especially those details that show the ugliness of this history. It's left off because they want to protect the children and the generations from that ugliness, and they just don't want to focus on the bad stuff, and that's natural. When the history is written by the victor, you will find that. Highlighting half-truths that are actually closer to lies than truth. Now, in the early editions of these textbooks, probably now they just became smarter about writing these textbooks. In the early editions, they show the superiority of Europeans over other ethnicities. And you find that argument in their books. In the turn of the last century, it was there, calling other ethnicities as savages, like Native Americans, for example, and things like that. They don't have this now because they got smarter, but it's still there, it's ingrained in there. Now back to the story. If you watch the story, and I don't want to really dwell much on it, if you watch the story, watch that cop pushing his knee against Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, while Floyd is pleading for his life, telling him, I can't breathe. Telling him, I can't breathe. Giving him the courtesy of, sir, I can't breathe, sir, just appealing to his humanity. And if you look at his face, the cop's face, it's void of any feeling of empathy. Completely void of any feeling of empathy. And that is a dangerous observation. And it's not just him, it's so many people who have this problem, that the first thing they think of is dehumanizing the other person so you can do whatever you want to him. Mind you, these people, what I mean here is, when you have slaves, treating them as property. And I remember in one of these movies that I watched, and I'm going to say the name of the movie, it is 12 Years a Slave. The owner of the slave said, can't a person do whatever he wants with his property? While he was literally killing his slave. Can't he do anything with his property? That is the mindset. It's not some angry cop. There was no anger on his face, and that is more dangerous. When you find that you're doing it like naturally, it becomes natural. That is dangerous. Now, speaking about it, it's really difficult. And I can't really generalize. Not all people are like that. Not all officers are like that, definitely. But with that officer, there were 3 other officers who did not stop him. They may not be like him, but they did not stop him. They didn't tell him, hey, stop, you're killing the man. So, what I wanted to say here is it's not because of ignorance. Some people have racism because of ignorance, but they go back to their humanity and they don't do this kind of thing. You could be an ignorant racist, but still have compassion and love people. But when it is ingrained in the way you learn, you're taught this. It is something that is within, it's systemic. That is the word, it is systemic. I'm afraid to say it, but it is systemic. When you dehumanize the other and think that they don't deserve to live because you're the only one that's worthy of life. I've heard it so many times. I worked in the prison system. I've heard it so many times from so many officers saying, what a waste of a life, talking about prisoners. What do you mean, what a waste of a life? Now, you may ask, why am I talking about this in the khutbah? Because we as Muslims have no choice but stand with those who are oppressed and protect them and help them. Allah commanded us to do that. Because respecting human life in Islam is essential. It's a principle of Islam. It's actually one of the objectives of the Islamic law, to protect and preserve life. All kinds of life, not just human life, but also all kinds of life. You can't even hunt animals if you are not in need of hunting. You can't hunt animals for game. Allah, in the name of Allah, this life was put in that body. You cannot take it away. That life is owned by Allah, not by you. And that is the difference between what people talk about Islamic, Islam and slavery in Islam. It's a completely different story, because a slave in Islam was a brother of his owner. He was his brother, sometimes he would be called his son. He was treated way better than any employee here in the West. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, من أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل أنه من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا ومن أحياها فكأنما أحيا الناس جميعا. Allah says that it's for that, meaning for the story of the children of Adam when one of them killed his brother. He said, because of that, we commanded and established upon the people of Israel, which was the first Muslim ummah, established Muslim ummah, that whoever kills a person without a reason, without a legitimate reason, as if he killed the whole humanity, and whoever restored life in a person as if he restored life in the whole humanity. The second thing is why we should really care about this. I see the attitude of elitism in America. I see the attitude of elitism, like there's an elite group, an elite caste, and this is refused and rejected in Islam. There is no elitism in Islam. And actually the struggle against the elite group and their resistance to the truth and rejection to the call of Allah has been a major part of every prophet's message. If you read all the messages of the messengers, how they addressed the people, the first people that were always against them and stopping them were the elite, al-mala. And the prophets carrying the word of Allah, carrying the call of Allah, struggled against these elites. فقال الملأ الذين كفروا من قومه ما نراك إلا بشرا مثلنا وما نراك اتبعك إلا الذين هم أراذلنا بادي الرأي وما نرى لكم علينا من فضل بل نظنكم كاذبين. The elite among them, those who disbelieved in the call, they told Nuh, we don't see except that you are a human just like us. And we only see that the riffraff, the weak ones, They call them riffraff, aradhiluna. And that's the attitude. When you feel like you're better than others, everyone else is riffraff to you. We can only see that the riffraff are following you. The riffraff in the eyes of Allah will get the highest level of Jannah. When the people of Quraysh came to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and said, we don't want to sit with these people. These were our slaves. These poor people, they're our slaves. We don't like the way even they smell. We don't want to smell them. We don't want to see them. If you want to talk to us, give us a different gathering. Before the Prophet even said anything, Allah revealed Quran right away. وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ وَلَا تَعْدُ عَيْنَاكَ عَنْهُمْ وَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. Stick and be patient with those who worship Allah night and day. The slaves. When Muhammad ﷺ was sent, the slaves found relief. They knew that there was a relief in this message. They're going to be free again. They're going to be recognized. They're going to have a happy life. They're going to live their life rather than being afraid all the time. Allah gave it. It's in the Quran. There's no way you go around it. It's established. It's a constitution in the Quran. You are equal. You're not one better than the other. And the last thing I want to say, Islam established and confirmed human equality and brotherhood. We're all brothers. We're all equal. Allah created us from one person. We don't have different parents. We don't have different statuses. Or there's no strata in Islam. There's no caste in Islam. There are people who are rich, people who are poor, but they all cooperate and live together and help one another. You will find the poor standing next to the rich, the one from a tribe standing next to the one who doesn't have a tribe. And they all worship Allah together. Human brotherhood. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said it clearly, كُلُّكُمْ لِآدَمْ وَآدَمْ مِنْ تُرَابٍ. All of you came from Adam, and Adam was created from dust. So there is no way that one of you is better than the other. What made that officer think that he has the ability and the right to take someone's life in such a gruesome way? In Islam, slaves of all kinds who became free after that, all colors thrived in Islam. I just want to mention one story, and then I'll conclude my khutbah. Ubadah ibn Samit radiallahu anhu, one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, he was a black man. And he was sent with Amr ibn al-As to Egypt. Amr ibn al-As chose him to go and be the Muslims' delegation, the head of the Muslims' delegation to Al-Muqawqis. When Al-Muqawqis saw him, he saw a huge black man. He got scared. He said, "Take this black man away from me. Bring someone else. I can't talk to him. I'm afraid of him." The delegation says, "We don't have another one. He is the head of our delegation. He's going to speak on our behalf. There's no other one that will speak on our behalf. You have to accept it." That's when Islam is strong. That's when you have the izzah of Islam. So Ubadah ibn Samit smiled when he found that when Al-Muqawqis finally gave in. He said, "But please, can you stay away from me? I can't." Ubadah ibn Samit said, "Just to begin, you're afraid of me. We have 1,000 like me in the army. We have 1,000 who are like me in the army." أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والحمد لله. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وعافنا واعف عنا اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وعافنا واعف عنا. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وعافنا واعف عنا. وأقم الصلاة.